Again, I'm Christine Biglin from St. Mary's County Library. We're in Southern Maryland. I think a lot of you might be from out of our area. So welcome to our library program tonight. And we have with us Tracy Kaufman, who is with Candid organization. They're the providers of the Foundation Directory database. And in addition to talking about grants tonight, Tracy will also be giving a brief overview about how that network works online. And my library, which is in Leonardtown, Maryland, is an Access FIN, which is part of the Financial Information Network. And you can physically come to our library and access the full Foundation Directory Professional to find funding options for you. And I'm also going to include information for those out of the area, how you might be able to find a FIN Access site near you. So I would now like to welcome Tracy Kaufman to tell us all about Introduction to Finding Grants.
Great, thank you, Christine, and thank you everyone for joining. My name's Tracy, and I will be leading our session tonight. Bear with me just a moment while I share my screen. So welcome. If you are here for an introduction to finding grants, then you are in the right place. So this is going to be all about the things that you need to know before you approach a foundation for a grant. So this is going to be specific to foundation grants rather than, say, government grants. And this is going to be more relevant for nonprofit organizations than for, say, individuals. It's harder, it's messier, kind of qualifying for grants on an individual level. And I'll talk about that a little more as we jump in. My name is Tracy Kaufman. I forgot to update my job title here. I'm currently Network Engagement Manager, but before then I was Programs Manager at Candid, and I've been with the organization for about 15 years now as a librarian, and these days teaching a lot of our professional development workshops. A bit about what Candid is. Candid is a nonprofit organization made out of two long-standing legacy organizations, Foundation Center and GuideStar. Foundation Center has been around for a very, very long time, since 1956. And since that time, they have been the #1 source of data, research, and information on foundations and grants and grant making and philanthropy worldwide. GuideStar, meanwhile, has been around since 1994, and they are the #1 source of data on the nonprofit sector. And about 3 years ago, Foundation Center and GuideStar came together, became one organization. We changed our name to Candid, and now all of the data and research and information about foundations, nonprofits, grants, philanthropy, everything, it's all just in one place here. And thank you very much to the St. Mary's County Library for hosting tonight's session, where you will be able to get access to the Foundation Directory online if you're interested in doing grant research. And I'll run you through a quick demo of how to use that database as part of our class tonight. So as part of this session, by the end, we should all have a good understanding of the different types of foundations that are out there, along with their motivations for giving grants. We're going to talk a bit about credibility and what it means for an organization that's seeking grants. We're going to jump into research. How do you research a foundation? And how do you plan your initial approach? And this is going to be all framed around the 10 most important things that you need to know about finding grants, along with some myths about the process. So we may as well start with a very common myth, which is that the idea that you can survive on just grants. Sometimes when people haven't done a whole lot of this grant seeking before, they can get it into their mind that all you need to do is go out there and find some giant foundation and write to them and say, "Dear Ford Foundation, $1 million, please," and you're all set. And I'm guessing most of you do not believe that, but if you did, you cannot survive on grants alone. What do I mean by this? Let's take a look at some research. So you're looking at a chart that comes from Giving USA, which is a report that comes out of Indiana University each year. And this is kind of showing the breakdown of where nonprofits are getting their money from. This is private contributions specifically. And what you'll see here on where nonprofit money comes from is this 19% here. This is all that foundation money. This is foundation grants here. So it is an important piece of where nonprofits' money is coming from, but it's a relatively modest piece. If you compare that to, say, this giant piece of the pie, which is individual giving, just regular people, regular donors. And even if you backed up from this pie chart here, this here is still not the full picture of where nonprofit money is coming from. This is just private contributions, which is something like maybe like 15% of where nonprofit money is coming from. If you were to look at the bigger pie that contains this private contributions circle here, you would see things like government funding, investment income, and the biggest piece of where nonprofit money comes from, which is actually earned income, like charging for goods and services, revenue generating activity. So that's not donations or grants or anything like that at all. That's like you sell t-shirts with your organization's logo on them, or you have an event and you sell tickets. You make some kind of product or do some kind of service that you charge the public for. That is earned income. And that is typically about half of where nonprofit money comes from. So if you think about that and you think about this huge amount that comes just from individual donors, foundation grants are just a modest piece. That being said, foundation money can be kind of nice because there is a certain amount of stability involved in it compared to individual giving. So individual giving is great. Because first of all, there are so many people in the world. The biggest reason why individual giving is so high here is just because there are more human beings on Earth than there are foundations and corporations combined. And with people, you can make a more personalized appeal to them, and you can get a lot more loyalty over time, where like you can kind of cultivate small gifts into bigger gifts over time. And then if a donor really loves you, then they might end up in this little 9% piece over here, which is bequests. That's when people leave you money in their will. And this is growing, by the way, bequests. So individual giving is great. However, when times are tough, like in the economy, for example, people get really nervous and uncertain, and they tend to hold their wallets tight if they're not sure what's going to happen to their finances going forward. And so if there's an economic downturn, individual giving, like you don't always know what's going to happen. Foundation giving, meanwhile, is set up such that in the good times, they seem like they're often not giving quite enough. But in the bad times, they are giving a far bigger share than, say, just regular individual donors. And that's just because of the way that they're structured legally, that they are required by law to give out a certain percentage of their assets every single year. And so it's steady, reliable money that they have to give out no matter what. And so there's something nice to be said about that kind of stability. But from there, it's just a question of, are they giving it to you or are they giving it to someone else? And so we'll jump into a little bit more about that as we go forward. But the main idea here is that your money is never going to come just from one place. You want to aim for as diverse a source of revenue streams as possible. Just to say, like, you want your money to be coming from as many different types of places as realistically possible. The next thing to know here is that not all foundations are alike. There's a saying that if you know one foundation, you know one foundation. So what do we mean by that? So the classic type of foundation is a private foundation. If something is structured as a private foundation, that just means all of that foundation's money comes from a single source. It means there is a very wealthy person or a very wealthy family or a very wealthy company, etc., that decides they are going to make their philanthropy official and they are going to set up a private grant-making foundation. And from that, they have their giant pot of money, and they usually have some investments that kind of keep the level steady over time. And they sit on top of their mountain of money and they say, wherever shall we give this giant pot of money? And so it's going to be a little different from another type of foundation. And private foundations have three main types. The independent foundation is the most common type of private foundation. This is also oftentimes called a family foundation. And these can have a lot of variety to them. Like a lot of the classic gigantic household name foundations are structured as independent foundations. Things like the Ford Foundation or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or the Knight Foundation or the Kellogg Foundation, a lot of those big, huge places, those are independent foundations. However, what's also an independent foundation is a teeny tiny family foundation that is exactly literally what it sounds like. It's a family. And it's important to know the difference because the approach can be a little different between the different sizes of foundations. For one thing, a place like the Ford Foundation, they're very large, and they have a website, and they have staff, and they have infrastructure. The Ford Foundation is able to accept applications from just the general public if they want to, because they have enough people and enough infrastructure to handle thousands of grant applications every year. They've got program directors, they got program officers, they got program assistants, etc. The point is they have capacity. Compare this to a tiny family foundation. Maybe they only have a couple of staff members, or maybe they have 0 staff members and it's just literally the family making these decisions. Really different. So there's a little bit more personalization if you're dealing with just a straight up family foundation with no staff. And oftentimes they don't even have a website because they don't have the capacity to even set one up. And they're often not taking applications just from the general public because they don't have enough people to read thousands of applications every year. However, if someone is as big as the Ford Foundation or as small as a teeny tiny family foundation, regardless, the annual payout rules still apply. They're still required to give out a certain amount of money each year. So just because a tiny family foundation says that like, oh, we don't take unsolicited applications, like they're still giving to somebody. So at that point, like, why not you? So that kind of drives at how you can't get too put off when someone says that they don't take unsolicited applications. It just means it's a longer road to get there. You have to figure out how to become one of the solicited organizations who they invite to apply. And I'll talk a little bit about how you're going to do that as we get a little further in and we talk about how do you actually approach a foundation. But that's the independent foundation. You've also got a company-sponsored foundation, which is exactly what it sounds like. This is just a corporation that decides they're going to take their philanthropy officials, set up a legal grant-making foundation, etc. All the same rules and regulations apply to a corporate foundation as to any type of foundation. And there are many rules and regulations, but all the same stuff. An operating foundation is a little different. You're usually not going to approach an operating foundation as often for a grant, just because they usually are like, they'll sometimes fund outside organizations, but more often they're funding their own internal programs. Like a research institution is often a good example of an operating foundation. They give out grants, but most of their grants are funding their own internal research programs. Now, those rules and regulations that I mentioned, let's talk about those. So the big one, which I've kind of danced around a little bit, is the annual payout requirement. All foundations are required by the IRS to give out at least 5% of their assets every year. Way back in the day, back before my organization was created, there weren't always these payout rates, but at some point in the 60s, like tax law was modified so that like they're saying these foundations might be doing something shady and being just tax shelters. We're going to require annual payout rates so that they're actually giving money away. And so 5% is what's established there. Some foundations will give out more than 5%. The majority will keep it pretty close to that 5% level, or because that allows them to be what we call a perpetual foundation, where they give out 5% of their assets and a lot of the rest of it, it's just like it's invested so that they can keep the pot of money stable so that they can conceivably give out grants forever if they wanted to. And there's good and bad to that. Like it's good to have money out there in circulation with nonprofits doing good stuff, but also at the same time, there are certain social problems that will be with us forever. And it'll be good to have pools of philanthropic money available to target some problems for years to come. So it's complicated. But there are some foundations that do give out more than 5% and that ultimately want to spend down their assets and stop existing. So that's known as a foundation sunsetting itself. And there are some big funders who have done this, like the Atlantic Philanthropies or the Edna McConnell Clark Foundation, places like that. They're like, okay, over the next 10 years, we're going to spend down all the money we have. So there's different types there. Another major regulation around philanthropy is about transparency. So just like any of you who's structured as a nonprofit, you are held to a certain standard of transparency by the IRS. You file your organization's tax returns. Those are publicly available documents. Anyone who wants to look at your nonprofit's tax returns can do so for free on the internet any day of the week. The same applies to foundations. They're held to a standard of transparency. So while nonprofits have their 990s as their tax forms, foundations have their own version of a 990, which is a 990 PF. PF stands for private foundation. And so this transparency is good news for all of us because it means even if a foundation is small, even if they don't have a website, etc., you can research foundations. And that's not always a straightforward process with, say, individual donors. Like you can research individual donors to a certain extent, but like all of our tax documents as people are not public documents. And there's a limit to how much you can find out about a person online necessarily. But with foundations, you can always find them and you can always find out how much money they have, how much money they're giving out, and who they're giving it to. So that is really nice for leveling the playing field, I think, that you don't necessarily have to have friends in high places to learn about a foundation that would be a good match for you. So that's a nice thing. Let's look at a couple other types of funders out there that you'll find in your travels. There are also corporate giving programs. So this is different from a corporate foundation. A corporate foundation is still a foundation. Same rules apply. They have to give out their 5% every year. Their tax returns are public documents, etc. Corporate giving programs, they're not foundations. They give out grants, but they're not foundations. They're baked into the company itself. So this means, for the most part, with some exceptions, they kind of do what they want with their money. The giving is more tied to corporate profits. If they're having a good year, they might feel a little more generous. If they're having an off year, they're going to feel less generous. Like during the pandemic, corporate giving has plummeted because a lot of businesses were tanking in their profits. So that's a pretty good example there. Also, transparency, not the same in terms of any transparency. Like you can research corporate giving programs, but you're not going to find the same level of detail. And you might mistakenly think, oh, this place isn't giving out money, but they are. They just don't always have to tell you all about it is all. The nice thing is that the biggest corporations will often have both a foundation and a corporate giving program. And that's nice because if you find a company that seems up your alley, if one structure doesn't work out, the other one might. Like if you can't get through to the foundation, you might have better luck with the corporate giving program or vice versa. So that's nice. There's also grant-making public charities. So this is a foundation with all the same like rules and regulations, except private foundation, all of the money comes from one source. A grant-making public charity, all of their money, they have to fundraise like crazy to be able to have the money that they're giving out in terms of in the form of grants. A good example of a grant-making public charity is a community foundation. Community foundations give out plenty of grants and they do amazing work, but they're not able to give out grants without doing a ton of fundraising first. So if you go to a community foundation's website, you will find both an area about grants and an area about how to donate to us. So it's important to know what you're looking at when you're doing your research. That's why we're covering all of this. And they all have slightly varying motivations behind what they do. So there are different types of motivations. Private foundations, you can usually assume everything's on the level that there's a certain amount of altruism involved here. They primarily want to fulfill philanthropic goals and interests, supporting a variety of issues through an objective process. The words objective process are doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Like, while when you approach an individual donor, you can do more of an emotional appeal sometimes. With a private foundation, they are much more like detached at arm's length, and they are going to want to really more objectively assess your qualifications before deciding to give you a grant. They want to know, are you credible and do you have a really high impact? Above all, foundations want to see two things from you more than anything. They want to see credibility and impact. And if you can demonstrate to them that you are a really credible organization, you can be trusted, and that your programs get results, you have a big impact in the community. If you can do those two things, you're going to do really well. Corporations, it's a little different, their motivations. They focus more on branding, visibility, and corporate social responsibility, which sounds kind of like altruism, that CSR part, but really what it is publicity and public relations. Corporations are not as much giving from the goodness of their hearts. They are mostly giving because it enhances their bottom line. It's good for business. Consumers spend more money with companies that are viewed as socially responsible, and corporations know this. And so it's part of their business strategy to have a certain presence in the world of social good. And so when you're approaching a corporation, it's a little different. They care a little bit less about like how great of an impact are you having, and they care more about how many people are you serving. And how many people visit your website each month? How many people subscribe to your newsletter? You're having an event? How many people are coming? And who are they? What are the demographics? What's the age group? Where are you going to put our logo? How big can our sign be? And will it be right in the middle, or will it be like off in the back somewhere? Can we have a booth? That is what a corporation cares about. And so it's important to know that that's going to be a different approach going into this. Grant-making public charities, very similar in their process to private foundations, except that they're hyper-focused on specific population groups, specific issue areas, or specific communities. So like grant-making public charities, they are giving for reasons of altruism similar to any foundation, but it's a little bit more just focused, like with a community foundation. If you live in that community that they serve, great. But if you don't, not so great. Or examples of grant-making public charities can include like the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. That's a grant-making public charity. They give out grants, but they also fundraise a lot. And if you're looking for grants, you'd better be doing something related to Parkinson's in the work that you do in order to qualify. So very, very hyper specific. or like the Susan G. Komen Foundation. That's another grant-making public charity, very specific in their grants. Okay, the next thing to know about finding grants is that grant writing is never about the need of your organization. If you write a grant proposal, one of the classic pieces of the grant proposal that you have to do again and again is the need statement. And it's easy to get confused during the need statement writing and think, this is where I get to say how much we need the money. And boy, do we need the money. But grant writing isn't about your need. It is about the need in the community. So when you're approaching a funder, you want to lead with the need. It's about the problem to be solved here. So thinking about what is the reason why your organization exists and what is the reason why your program exists. This is the before to the after that your programs bring about. It's about the journey from problem to solution. So you want to identify what is the problem out there that your programs exist to address. So think about, like, who are you serving and what are their needs and how will you make an impact on them? That's what you need to come across when you're talking to a foundation. What difference would this funding make to your community and its people? Like, nonprofits and businesses are different, but it helps to kind of think of this as formulating a business plan. No business would start without first identifying a hole in the marketplace that their business is really well positioned to fill. And that's what you want to do here. Figure out, for my nonprofit, what is the hole in the marketplace that we are well positioned to fill? Is there a lack of after-school programming in your community and the community needs it, and you are providing high-quality after-school programming? And be prepared to talk about the results of that after-school programming, if so. So it's really important to keep that in mind, to lead with the need. And the need statement is really nice in the grant proposal for a couple of reasons. For one thing, it's a good storytelling opportunity. You get to talk about a problem. You get to really set the stage for the time and place in which your organization exists, in which your programs exist, and you get to talk about a crisis. And it's important to make this thing readable and use this as a storytelling opportunity and realize that human beings are going to be reading this grant proposal that you're writing. And you want to some extent, tell them a compelling story about an issue that's going on in your community that needs to be addressed. And at the same time, the needs statement is also nice because it's a good chance to demonstrate your credibility. By this, I mean that you understand the community that you serve. You understand the people that you're working with. You understand their needs. You understand how to solve those needs. You understand the root causes of whatever issue that they are facing. And you can back it up with any kind of data and statistics, because you'll need to back it up. So what do we mean otherwise by credibility? Because like I said, funders care tremendously about credibility. The most basic bit in credibility is, are you a legal nonprofit? So foundations are generally required to give to charitable organizations for charitable purposes. And the way they're able to prove to the IRS that that is the case with whoever they're giving money to is they want to see that, like, 501c3 nonprofit tax exempt status. Like, there are funders who will give directly to individuals, but it is a very, very small percentage, just because legally it's very, very difficult for them to do so. So are you a legal nonprofit? If so, great. If not, can you become one? Or an alternative to starting your own nonprofit is you could get a fiscal sponsor. Fiscal sponsorship is great. And a lot of like new emerging organizations use fiscal sponsorship, or some people stay fiscally sponsored forever, or a lot of artists do it too, because it kind of opens up the pool of funding as well for arts projects. It just means you're entering into a legal agreement with an existing 501c3 organization. And when you apply for grants, you use their 501c3 status. If you receive a grant, your fiscal sponsor technically is the one who receives the grant money, and then they disperse the funding down to you. And the only catch is that they'll generally take like a small percentage of any of that grant money, like between 5 and 10%. If anyone has questions about fiscal sponsorship, I can talk about it forever. Let me know if this applies to anyone, and I can like find you a good link or two that'll give you more information. Credibility also means, do you have a compelling mission that is compatible with the funder's focus area? I think this is mostly self-explanatory, but compatible with the funder's focus area, that is a big deal. Like, not everybody is your funder. Not everyone is a prospect for you. And that'll lead us into kind of the next bit in a moment about how do you figure out who's compatible with you. Do you have strong leadership? That's also involved in credibility. So who's doing the work at this organization, and what are their qualifications? Can they be trusted to do this work effectively? Do you provide high quality programs that meet a real need in the community? We talked about the need and how important it is to like identify, here's what the need is for us to exist. Now, how are you solving that need? How are you providing solutions to problems? How are you making an impact? So being able to talk really coherently about your programs and the difference that they're making in ways that are both quantitative and qualitative, like numerical and with stories or testimonials as well. And finally, do you have a strong organizational and financial infrastructure? This one is sometimes the hardest one, but funders care about this because funders are risk averse. Like, if it seems like you are on financially very, very shaky ground and you might fall apart and have to shut your doors at any moment, that makes a foundation nervous. That makes you look like a risky investment. And a grant is like an investment. It is less like a donation. Like a donation is a donation. A grant from a foundation is much more like an investment, and it'll help you a lot to think of it that way, and to think of it in terms of they're looking for a good ROI, a good return on investment, not a financial return on investment, but a social return on investment. Like a good ROI is going to mean like great things are going to happen if they give you this money. You're really going to make a difference. You're going to do what you said you were going to do, and people's lives are going to be better in a measurable way. And a low risk, meaning there's a very low risk that anything is going to go terribly wrong along the way, such as you run out of money and have to shut your doors. So financial infrastructure is important, or like you're not hemorrhaging staff, like everybody's quitting every 6 months. That might also look a little shaky. So things like that, it's hard, but it's important to them. So those are all the things that you got to kind of focus on. The next bit, it's important to do your homework first when you're approaching funders. Grant seeking is very, very competitive. And there's like 1.8 million nonprofits active in the US right now. There are a lot. And there's quite a few funders as well, but there are way more nonprofits than there are funders. And it's quite competitive out there. So because of this, you want to be prepared and do as much research as you possibly can and know as much as you can about a funder before you approach them and start talking to them. And this ties in to the fact that the one-size-fits-all approach also does not work. Like, you're not going to write one grant proposal and send the same thing word for word to like all the foundations in town. It's not like that. It's a lot like if you've spent time out on the job market and you apply for a lot of jobs, you write a lot of cover letters. You wouldn't write just one cover letter and send the exact same cover letter word for word all over town, because like employers are going to be able to sniff that out from a mile away that you sent the same cover letter to everybody. They want to feel like this was written just for them and that you're approaching them for a reason. Just like with a job application and a cover letter that you write, it's not enough to just say, here's my experience, here's my education, but you have to go one further and say, here's what it is about my experience and education that makes me the right fit for this potential job with this potential employer. Same thing with funders. They want you to walk them to the fit. Why are you approaching them and not somebody else? They want to know that you did your research and develop an individual strategy for each funder and tailor your proposal for who you're approaching and why you're approaching them. So this drives us towards the heart of the matter, which is the fact that to get the grant, you have to find the right match. You have to find a match of issue areas. You have to find funders who care about the same issues that you care about, who care about the same problems that you care about. You have to find like a match of values overall. Think about what you organizationally care about and finding funders who also care about that. Because it goes without saying that whatever work you're doing in your programs, it is special, it's important, it serves a purpose. And it's true. But that doesn't mean that every single funder prioritizes that same issue to the same extent as you. Same thing as with like if someone stops you on the sidewalk with a clipboard about like save the whales. If they stop you, some charity about saving the whales, and they ask you for money, like you would give them money if you do care about saving the whales. But if that's just not really your priority, like we all have a limited amount of charitable dollars to hand out here. And if that's just not where you give your money, then they're barking up the wrong tree. Same deal with foundations. You don't want to be barking up the wrong tree. It's all about research here. Ideally, you want to be able to create a partnership. They have the money, but you have the expertise to do the work. And one cannot exist without the other. So they cannot exist without you, because all they have is the money, not the expertise. And all you have is the expertise and not the money. So you're two halves of a whole here. You want to come together and create just kind of a natural, fruitful partnership. Make sense? Solving problems that you both care about. So you want to ask yourself these few questions here. And I'm going to hop out of this PowerPoint in a second and show you how to do this research using Candid's database. You want to think about who funds in my area of interest and who supports the population that I serve. You want to think about who is funding in my geographic area and who is providing the support that I need. So with that, I'm going to hop out of here and we'll do a little research together. Anyone have questions about anything I've covered so far while I'm switching gears here? Okay. Don't see anything in the chat, but if you have questions, like pop them in the chat, feel free. So what you're seeing before you right here, this is the Foundation Directory Online Professional. So this here is Candid's online database of over 200,000 different funders. If there's a foundation, I guarantee you it is in here. So this includes like the ones that don't have websites. Over 90% of foundations don't have websites. So if you're trying to just like rely on Google, you'll find some funders, but you're not going to find all of the funders just by Google alone. Oh, I see a question. Can anyone access this? You mean access the foundation directory? Well, funny you should ask. So this is normally a subscription database. So like large nonprofits, usually they subscribe to it. Like I was talking about earned income earlier. Candid ourselves, our big earned income stream is people subscribing to stuff like this. However, you can get free access through one of your local public libraries. Like this session tonight is being brought to you by the St. Mary's County Library, where there is access to the foundation directory free of charge to the public. I'll just put a link in here for anyone who wants to pay them a visit and do your grant research. If you're not local to St. Mary's County, I will give you a link to find where you can find your nearest public library to find access to the foundation directory. So this link here to the Candid Learning site, Find Us, just type in your location or your zip code, and this will show you the nearest location where you can get free access to the foundation directory. And I see a follow-up question under here now that I'm posting this in. Do they allow distance access or in-library access? For the professional level of the foundation directory, you would want to come in person to the library. If you want distance access to the foundation directory, maybe at the end here, I will find a link for a campaign that we're running called Go for the Gold, which is if you claim your GuideStar profile and get a gold seal of transparency, and you are with an organization that has an annual budget of less than $1 million, then you would qualify for a free 1-year subscription to the essential level of the foundation directory online, which doesn't have everything that the professional level version does, but it has a lot. Let me just show you. So let's say we're on the front page of the database here, and there are examples of what some searches may look like here. Ballet School in New York City, Animal Shelter in Portland, Maine, Food Pantry in Dallas. Let us say, let's just do that first search just for the sake of example. Let's say we were looking for funding for a ballet school in New York. That's what we want funding for. We run our search. We get a series of lists. So first, you get a list of, here are all the funders that match the criteria that you put in. And here we've got almost 1,700 funders that match what we're looking for. And it's pretty nice. So you'll first have this list, and if you click on any of these funders here, you will be able to get a whole profile for them where you can learn all kinds of stuff about them, and it'll be very nice. So first you have the name of the funder, where they're based, which is not always the same thing as where they fund, how much money they have, how much money they give. Amount funded refers to the amount that they've given to the subject area that you put into your search. And the grant count here is how many different grants have they given out to the subject area that you put into your search. By default, these are in order of grant count. So whoever's given out the largest number of grants in your subject area is going to show up on top here. But if you need to reorder this, you can do so however you want. If you want an alphabetical list, just click Grantmaker. You want the biggest foundations on top, click Assets, etc. And I'll click us into one of these profiles in a sec. First, let's just see what else we have here. Next, we have list of grants. So these are past grants that have already taken place. Now, why is this helpful? It helps you see the funding landscape here. This helps you see, okay, who else who's doing similar work to me has gotten funding in the past? It helps you assess a funder's giving history, and a funder's past giving is the best indicator of what their future giving is going to look like. So that's helpful information for you. Also, when you see the names of the organizations that have gotten funding before, do you see any familiar names here? Do you see any groups that you've worked with, you've partnered with before, that you're friendly with? Because that might be a connection for you. That might be someone who could make an introduction for you, put in a good word for you with this funder. You could even collaborate on a grant proposal together. So it's helpful for kind of networking your way in with funders as well. And over on the right here, you'll even get the dollar amount for how much that grant was for. And if you click on these dollar amounts, you will oftentimes get like a short description of what that grant was for. So you can really zero in on like, does this funder give to projects that are similar to mine? It's useful. Grant recipients, this is just who are other organizations that have been pretty successful in getting grants in your subject area before, and you can look through their listings of past grants they've gotten and steal all their funders. No, it's not a competition. You've got tax forms. If you want to look at anybody's tax returns, be my guest, but that's usually not going to be the first thing you go for. So quickly, one thing that is not in the essential level of the foundation directory is this grants piece here. Looking at the past grants that have already taken place, this is not visible in the foundation directory essential, which is the thing that you could get your own free subscription for through this campaign that we're running. But you would still have this grant makers piece. Like everybody gets access to this list of grant makers here. Let me just show you what you find in these. Let's look at a funder profile here. On the top, you can see when was this information last updated. We have a bunch of data scientists who are always working on this around the clock. If the funder has a website, it'll be listed up on the top here. You can get a good glance at what subject areas do they fund the most, and like where do you fall in to their subject areas and their giving. Like you could say, arts and culture, huh? What type of arts and culture do they give towards? And you can find yourself down a rabbit hole here. And you're like, all right, we've got our visual arts, our museums, our performing arts. What kind of performing arts do they fund? And you can look through and say, okay, there's theater, music, dance. What kind of dance? Hey, there's ballet. And before you know it, you'll just find yourself in a whole list of past grant recipients. You can find an unbelievable amount of detail here if you want to. Where's the money going? So do they give near you or not? How big are the grants? Because part of finding the right fit is how much money are you looking to ask for? And do they give out grants in those sizes? Some funders are known for giving out like kind of small grants. Some funders are known for giving out big six-figure grants and everywhere in between. Just figuring out like, okay, if I ask for $50,000, is that a normal amount to ask this funder for? You can get a look at who else they've been giving money to in your issue area. You can get a list of all the subject areas that they give towards. We're looking at a community foundation here, and they tend to have a pretty broad array of issue areas that they give towards. Support strategies, what kind of support you looking for? Do you want general operating support rather than like program specific support, funding for your overhead? If they give general operating support, they might tell you about it in the support strategies area. Are you a new emerging organization? If so, it's a lot harder to get a grant if you're a brand new nonprofit, but the funders who do that, that's framed as seed money. You can build this into your search if you want to. Like we did a simple search, but you could also do an advanced search and build in stuff like that. About the funder, this is the funder talking about themselves in their own words. And so you can look at the kind of language they use and think, okay, the way they talk about the things they care about, like, does it mirror the way that we talk about the things we care about? You can look it through their program areas and see if you fit in any of these. You find your way to application information. So they'll tell you if you want to apply, here's how you apply. If they're going to say, we don't take unsolicited applications, this is where they're going to say that. But like, don't let that turn you off too much. I'll talk about that next, about what do you do if they don't take applications? If you want to look at their tax returns, again, like feel free. Who's who. You can figure out who works for this foundation. What program officer do you need to get a hold of? Print out these lists, give them to your board, and figure out, like, do they know any of these people? Finding out, like, if you have a connection somewhere, checking LinkedIn. Eventually, towards the bottom, you will find contact information. So when you're ready to make a move, their contact information is here. So that's great. And if you're using this for free in your local public library, up on the very top here, you can email things to yourself. So if you find a funder that looks good, you might not necessarily have access to that later. Send it to yourself. If you're in the library on like IP access on your own laptop, you can save it to your own computer as a PDF. So like, please do that so that you'll still have this information later on. Quickly, if you did want to do a fancy advanced search, this is back to the front page again. Simple searches in this box. If you wanted to do advanced, hit the part where it says advanced. And there's a section for additional filters as well. So there's 2 rounds of boxes here. So for instance, like, first of all, don't fill out all of these boxes. Some people think they have to fill out all the boxes. Don't do that. Subject area is good. Geographic focus is good. Other than that, maybe add 1 or maybe 2 other fields, but don't do more than that at a time. Otherwise, results will get weird. Support strategy. So if you want to search for seed money or something, you're a new nonprofit, you could put seed money in here. General support strategy. You're trying to run a capital campaign, you need a building, you can search for capital support here, that kind of stuff. If you want to isolate just the corporate funders, go to organization type and put down like corporate giving programs and company sponsored foundations. You can do that. Lots of stuff that you can do using the advanced search here. Okay, let me actually, before I forget, my share is getting messy here. I'm going to stop sharing just for a second while I try to dig up this information on the Go for the Gold campaign. So for anyone who wants to take advantage of, okay, yeah, because I see a question about this, to get that free year's subscription to the foundation directory. This link I just put into the chat, you can learn more there. If you have an annual budget of under $1 million, then you are eligible. They'll tell you exactly what you need to do in order to do this. Now, it won't be the version that has every single thing that that professional level version has that I just showed you. For that, you got to go to the library. But if you want just the grantmaker profiles, which is not nothing, it's really helpful, then it may behoove you to try that. Okay, let me go back to my PowerPoint here. Okay. So yes, overall, this drives at, it's very possible to find the right match. The research can be done. The information is out there. Like, as you can see, it's a pretty straightforward database to use. It's pretty user-friendly. And just a reminder for anyone who is local to St. Mary's County Public Library, you can access the professional level of the foundation directory at the library here. And for any of you who are not local, then check that Find Us link that I shared earlier in the chat. Type in your location and you'll see your nearest location where you can get free access to all of this.
You see, someone had asked if most libraries offer this, and I would say, yeah, not too many. Like my library is the Leonardtown Library, and we're the only one in Southern Maryland, which is a 3-county area.
Yeah, like I will say, I don't know how many states or countries for that matter we have represented, because I know sometimes we get people joining us from overseas. In the US, I think we have a location in all 50 states. We may have possibly lost like one state somewhere, but no matter what state you're in, there will be at least one location. And in a lot of states, there are multiple locations. We have close to 400 partner libraries. So like in your town or city, there may or may not be a location, but there will be one, like probably somewhere in your region. But check that link, type in your location, and you'll be able to see where is your nearest location. Like where I am in New York, I know like we have locations in every borough of New York City and all the surrounding areas nearby. Like we try to cover as broad a spread as we realistically can. Anyway, so I already covered this part before. Part of finding the right fit is asking for the right amount. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Figure out how much you're planning to ask for. And now we get into how do you find your way in the door. So you don't have to know someone in order to get a grant, but it sure helps. So someone who's had a conversation with someone at the foundation before is always going to have an advantage over someone who has never had a conversation with someone at the foundation. If you can find some way to get a connection, use it. By all means, use it. Places you can look to find someone to introduce you. And this especially applies to like those funders that say they don't take unsolicited applications. If someone says they don't take unsolicited applications, they still have to give out 5% of their assets every single year. They just don't know you yet, so they don't know to invite you. But if someone can make an introduction, you can look at your board members or some of your most loyal donors, other nonprofits or other organizations or companies or whatever that you partner with. Who do they know? Your current funders. If you already get grant funding from somebody, your current funders are probably the #1 best source of a referral to a new funder. Because the world of foundations is a small world and funders talk to each other. And if a current funder who already puts money behind you goes out there and says, oh, this organization here, I've been working with them for a while. I think they do great work. I think you'd like them too. I think it's worth having a conversation. Like that kind of thing is worth its weight in gold. So if you can get a current funder to put in a good word for you, please do. Check your LinkedIn network. Always like try to be connected with like as many people you know professionally as possible so that you can see like who knows the program officer at such and such foundation. You'll be able to quickly see those connections there. LinkedIn is great for this kind of stuff. And if all else fails, if you can't find a connection, there is no rule that says you cannot call these funders on the phone. You can call them on the phone. And anyway, the proposal is usually not the first thing that a foundation wants. Like this can refer to the fact that oftentimes before you submit the full proposal, they want an LOI, a letter of inquiry, just like a 1 to 2 page document that sort of summarizes everything that will eventually be in the full proposal. So that's kind of what this means. But also it means like they feel better if they've had a conversation with you first before they get your proposal. They don't want to get like just a lump of paper from a faceless organization that they've never encountered before in their lives. So do what you can to not be faceless. You can call these people on the phone, even if you don't have a connection to like make an introduction for you. Call them, but just use your phone call wisely. Like be brief and to the point. Don't keep them on the phone telling them your life story for 45 minutes. You might have to script yourself a little bit, maybe jot down a couple bullet points or like a couple of key questions that you want to make sure to ask them. Or like if they have a website, like questions that are not easily answerable on their website. And like know who you're talking to and why you're talking to them. You might be talking to a program officer, or you might be talking to a receptionist, and that's fine too. Receptionists are gatekeepers, and they have a lot of quiet power. If you're nice to them, they have the power to open doors for you. And if you're not nice to them, they have the power to close doors on you. So if you're nice and pleasant and respectful of whoever you happen to be on the phone with and not like trying to like get over their heads, that can be really helpful for you. And you might get passed along to the program officer at some point. And just try to have a nice human conversation because they are human beings. And then ultimately, when they receive your proposal, they'll say, that was that nice person who called on the phone that time. And that's going to help. But anyway, so I had a conversation one time a couple years back with the program director of a pretty sizable foundation that does not take unsolicited applications. And I asked her, what are the usual ways that you get new grantees into your portfolio if you don't take unsolicited applications? And she told me, actually, a lot of them come through people who call us on the phone. So what happens then, and why I say phone rather than email, is that like email's okay, but with a phone call, like it's a live back and forth and they can kind of tease out more information from you. Like you make a statement and they can ask a follow-up question right there in the moment, and they can kind of assess in the conversation whether you're the right fit for them or not. And then by the time it comes time to send the application, sometimes by then the application is just a formality, that like the application process already happened in the form of conversations and they already understand a bit more about what you're all about, if that makes sense. So yeah, call them on the phone, but just be really thoughtful and careful with your phone call and like script yourself a little bit. So some key takeaways as we wind down, then I know we're running out of time, but I hope we'll have time for a question or two. You want to prove that you're credible. Credibility and impact. Never forget those, because that's what funders care about. And find the right fit between the things you do and the things that a funder cares about, and try to emphasize that fit in your conversations and in your proposals. Focus on the funder's interests and what's in it for them. Why should they be excited about this grant happening and not just you? And be very, very prepared. Do your research and know who you're approaching and why you're approaching them and not somebody else. Sound good? I'm going to stop sharing here. Okay, and I think I missed a question a little further up.
Yes. Rosa had asked if you're an incorporated nonprofit, but your 501c3 status is still pending. Do you still count as a legal nonprofit?
Sort of, but oftentimes it's really helpful to have a fiscal sponsor during this phase of time. Fiscal sponsorship is really widely used by young emerging nonprofits. I am going to pull up a link. The fiscal sponsor directory. This is not a Candid resource. This is just a really handy website. So fiscal sponsorship is just a good way to make sure that like you do have that 501c3 status, even if you're still waiting for your paperwork to go through. Because like it can take a while, and I'm betting that like nowadays it's probably taking slower than ever. Like whenever the IRS is understaffed, like things are just going to slow down more and more. But yes, like you want that 501c3 status. Okay. I see another question here. My nonprofit benefits societies and public libraries all over the country. Would it be worth going after community grants if a local society we service is only a tiny part of who we are? Yes, you can do this, but you want to specifically talk to them about the way they serve like that community. So you want to look at, of all the work that you do nationwide, what work are you doing in that specific community? Who are you targeting there? How many people do you reach there? So that they have an idea of what does it mean for like their populations that they aim to help. So like you'll talk a little bit in your organizational background information about like your nationwide work, but mostly focus on the locally specific stuff if you're looking at community grants. Otherwise, like If you're looking for nationwide type of support, like you'll want to go for like big national level funders for that.
And there's a question, how transparent should we be with funders regarding status of deliverables/results?
I would say as transparent as you realistically can, because if you're not transparent with them, first of all, like these people are not fools. They may figure it out themselves. And if you do get the grant and you are not hitting your outcomes and you didn't tell them about it, they don't like that. They feel like that's not a good, healthy partnership. And then you probably won't get the grant the second time around. Like, you want to generally be on the level with your funders. And like, if it looks like things aren't going very well this year, and I don't know if we're going to make it to our outcomes, you want to have your conversation with your funder about this sooner rather than later, because funders, they're risk averse and they hate surprises. And know whether, like, is this something that's within your control or outside of your control, why you're not hitting your outcomes? Because there's a difference. And if it's something outside of your control, like, I really don't think that will affect the relations with your funders that much. And if it's something that you can control, then what are you going to do about it going forward? Are you going to be adjusting your programming to try to get better outcomes? Can you talk with the funder and brainstorm together about ideas, etc.? But yeah, be transparent as much as you can.
Just mention again, this is all wonderful information. Tracy, you did such a nice job, presenting it. So it's a great overview on what you need to know to get started. To do the research, it is absolutely helpful to use your database. And again, I'm at the Leonardtown Library in St. Mary's County, Maryland, and Southern Maryland. We're the only library that you can access the professional database from. During our hours, you can also pick it up off our Wi-Fi, which is available out in the parking lot. So you're not really restricted to just our library parking, our library open hours, but you do physically have to come here to get to that.
Well, I hope that this was at least a little bit helpful for everybody. And I'd love to wish you luck in your fundraising journeys.